They said she didn't belong there, not in that office, not in that chair, not in that title. They said it with their eyes, with their silences, with the way they talked over her in meetings and rolled their eyes when she mentioned her daughter. But what they didn't know was that she had spent her whole life opening doors no one else wanted to open. She wasn't just a mother. She was a mother of a daughter with disabilities, the kind of mother who could calm a meltdown in the middle of the grocery store with one hum of a song and a touch to the cheek. The kind of woman who left the house every morning with a backpack full of snacks, wipes, headphones and emergency meds, not for her job, but for the therapy sessions her daughter needed just to make it through a school day. And after that, she'd clock in as a real estate assistant in one of the busiest firms in the city, where she was expected to smile, push listings, and hit quotas, even after 3 hours of waiting at insurance offices or calming seizures in the back of her old car. They never asked about that part, they just wanted her numbers. But still, she stayed, because she needed the job, because her daughter needed health insurance, because starting over again wasn't an option she could afford. Her name was Tasha, a mother, a warrior, and maybe the strongest person I've ever known. She worked under a woman named Melanie Hurst, a name that would one day flood the headlines. But back then, Melanie was just the boss, the kind who smiled too wide in meetings but sent emails at 11:30 p.m. demanding updates, the kind who wore power suits to intimidate and red-bottom heels like she was stepping on someone's dreams. Melanie had a saying, "If you want sympathy, call your mother. If you want success, show up early." And every time Tasha asked for an hour off to take her daughter to therapy, Melanie would pause, look her up and down, and say something like, "We all have problems, Tasha. Don't make yours the company's." But one day, Tasha didn't ask. She just went, because that week, her daughter had stopped speaking again. And no amount of real estate listings or client meetings was more important than getting her baby girl to the therapist who might bring her voice back. She left her desk at 3:42 p.m., came back the next morning at 8:01, and when she opened her inbox, there it was, termination notice. Due to job abandonment, no meeting, no warning, no final paycheck, just gone. But what Melanie didn't know was that firing Tasha would open a door she couldn't close. Because the secrets Melanie had been hiding, they were about to spill all over the front page. And Tasha, she wasn't going down quietly. If you've ever had to work twice as hard to be seen as half as good, take a breath, baby. This story might be closer to yours than you think. The day after she was fired, Tasha sat in the car outside the therapy center. Her daughter, Maya, was inside, rocking slowly on a beanbag chair, headphones on, fingers fluttering like butterfly wings in front of her face. Tasha had told her, "Mama's gonna be right outside, baby. Always." But truth be told, she didn't know where they'd be next week. No job, no paycheck, no severance. The rent was already late, and her old Corolla needed new tires, but the real fear wasn't losing the apartment. It was losing custody. Because without a job, without stability, child services starts asking questions. And Tasha had fought too hard for Maya to grow up loved, safe, and with her mother. So she started calling every agency, every church, every food pantry. One woman told her, "Try the city shelter, maybe they can..." Tasha hung up before she finished. Because if she stepped foot in a shelter, her daughter's caseworker would be alerted within 24 hours. And Melanie knew that. That's why she fired her without cause. No complaints, no warnings, no HR. Just a document that claimed abandonment on the same day she clocked out 5 minutes early for therapy. But there was something Tasha still had, something more powerful than any lawyer. Documentation, emails, text messages, voice memos from meetings. See, Tasha wasn't naive. She'd been documenting every incident for months, like the time Melanie called her too emotional after she cried quietly in the break room, or when she suggested Tasha take a position more suited to single moms in front of a male colleague who laughed out loud. She saved them all. And now, with trembling hands and a cracked phone screen, Tasha opened a folder titled Insurance, just in case. She started writing. Not a complaint, not a resignation, a formal report with dates, times, screenshots, witness names. She didn't know if anyone would read it, but she sent it anyway, to HR, to the board, to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And then she waited. That night Maya drew a picture, two stick figures, holding hands. Above them in shaky purple crayon it said, "My mom is a hero." Tasha pinned it to the wall beside her bed, right next to the eviction notice. The next morning, her phone buzzed. Unknown number, blocked caller ID. She answered, heart pounding, and the voice on the other end said, "Ms. Thomas, we've received your file, and you may want to speak to someone in legal affairs." The call lasted 6 minutes, but it changed everything. The voice on the other end was careful, professional, cold even. "We've reviewed your submission, Ms. Thomas. We'd like to invite you in for a conversation." Not an apology, not a promise, just an invitation to a building she once walked through every morning with her head high and her shoulders tired. Now, it felt like walking into enemy ground. She wore the same blazer she used for open house days, the one with the stitched-up cuff and the faded lining. She held Maya's crayon drawing in her purse. She always carried it now, for strength. The receptionist didn't even look up when she walked in. Didn't offer a smile, just buzzed the door and pointed. The glass walls were still there. The smell of peppermint coffee still hung in the air. And Melanie, still in that corner office, still wearing her success like a shield. But this time, Tasha didn't turn her head down. She kept her eyes forward, straight into the room labeled Internal Review, HR and Legal. 3 people sat around the table. A man in a grey suit, a woman with a laptop, and someone else she hadn't seen before, older, with a folder in hand, and eyes that didn't blink much. They asked her to retell everything, the therapy days, the denied requests, the comments about being a single mum, the last-minute meetings, the termination without due process. They asked for the files. She handed over a USB drive, and then the woman with the laptop clicked through the emails. Click. "We can't build a business around your schedule, Tasha." Click. "I suggest next time you plan your child's crises around working hours." Click. "Consider this your warning. Next time you disappear, we'll assume you've quit." The room went quiet. No one spoke for a full minute. And then the man in the grey suit asked, "Do you have proof of the therapy appointments?" She nodded, pulled out a folder, every visit, every receipt, every signature from the center. He flipped through it slowly, then looked up and said, "You know, this isn't the first time we've had a complaint about Ms. Hurst." Tasha felt her breath catch. She wasn't alone. He continued, "But no one's ever come forward with this level of detail before. Oh, that folder she carried? It wasn't just a lifeline now. It was evidence." And in that moment, Tasha realized something. This wasn't just about getting her job back. This was about what Melanie had been doing for years, to women like her, to mothers, to the ones who couldn't afford to fight back, but she could, and she would. They asked her to step out so they could review further. She stood up, smoothed her skirt, held her head high, and just before she left the room, the older man looked at her and said, "Whatever happens next, thank you for your courage." She walked out slowly, heart pounding like a drum. And when she passed by Melanie's office, she saw something she'd never seen before. Melanie wasn't smiling. She was on the phone, standing, pacing, and her assistant was standing outside her door with a folder labeled EOC case material. That night, Tasha didn't sleep, not because of fear this time, but because of fire. That quiet flame that burns in the belly when you know something is shifting. She stayed up, rereading every document she had, emails, meeting notes, client reports. And then she remembered something. A contract from 2 months before the firing. She'd closed on a $1.4 million property, handled the buyer solo, drafted the listing, walked the client through inspections, and coordinated every single detail. It had been the biggest sale of her year. But when the bonus time came, she got nothing. Melanie told her it had been a team effort, that her commission had been restructured, and the contract never appeared in her final portfolio. At the time, she hadn't questioned it. She was too busy managing therapy, IEP meetings, and 12-hour workdays, but now it felt deliberate. She logged into the company drive with the credentials she still had access to. Typed the buyer's name, no results. She tried the address, nothing. But when she searched by date, one file came up, hidden in a folder labeled Temp Review under someone else's initials. She opened it. Her name was on every line, her emails, her timestamps, her photos, but the agent listed Melanie Hurst. It was Tasha's sale, but Melanie had claimed it, stolen it, and not just that, the commission had already been paid. To Melanie's personal business account. Tasha took a screenshot, then another, then downloaded the full file. She wasn't just wronged, she was robbed, and suddenly the pieces started fitting together. Melanie had fired her not just to be cruel, but to bury something. If Tasha stayed long enough, she might have found the missing numbers, might have asked questions, might have uncovered the other names, other mothers, other stolen commissions, and now she had proof. But before she could send the file to the legal team, the screen flickered, access revoked. She'd been locked out, and a message appeared on the login screen. Account deactivated. Please contact your system administrator. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown number again, but this time the voice said, "Miss Thomas, we need you to come in again. We've discovered something, and it's serious." When she walked back into that office, Tasha wasn't the same woman who had trembled in the waiting room. She had her spine straight, her jaw set, her purse zipped tight around a folder of evidence. She didn't come to ask for her job back. She came to finish what she started. The legal affairs department looked different this time. No casual smiles, no clipboard pleasantries, just serious faces and a whiteboard full of names. She recognized some of them. Janelle, the temp who disappeared after reporting hostile supervision. Carmen, the other single mom who always ate lunch in her car. Anita, the front desk coordinator who cried the day Melanie restructured her out of a raise. And then there was hers. Tasha sat down. The older gentleman from before, the one who'd thanked her for her courage, cleared his throat. "You weren't the only one. We've received 3 additional reports since your file came in." Tasha gripped her knees. He continued, "Melanie Hurst has been listed in 6 HR complaints over the past 3 years, all involving women. 4 were mothers. 2 filed for disability accommodations on behalf of their children." The words hit like bricks. "All were terminated within 60 days of their requests." He paused. "And now, with your documentation and the recovered contract file, we believe there's a pattern, a serious one." Tasha exhaled slowly. He handed her a non-disclosure form. "We'd like your permission to use your report in an internal investigation, and we're recommending suspension, effective immediately, of Ms. Hurst." It felt surreal. The same boss who once smirked in her face was now being taken off the floor because she had spoken up. But even as a flicker of relief rose in her chest, Tasha knew it wasn't over. Because justice isn't just paperwork, it's repair. And Melanie, she still had power, still had friends upstairs, still had secrets. And Tasha, she still had a daughter to feed, and no paycheck coming. On her way out, she passed by the break room. It was quiet, but one of the janitors, an older woman with silver braids, stopped her near the vending machine. She whispered, "I heard what you did. My niece left here broken. You don't know what you started, baby." Tasha blinked back tears. "You opened a door." The woman pressed something into her hand, a keychain, just a silver key, no label, but smooth and worn, like it had passed through generations. She said, "Hold on to that. Sometimes the door you need don't have no sign." Tasha nodded. She didn't understand it fully yet, but somehow she knew she was walking into something bigger than herself. And later that night, as she tucked Maya into bed, her daughter turned and whispered, "Mommy, you look like a hero today." But just before Tasha drifted off, she got a text from an unknown number. It said, "Careful where you dig. Some doors shouldn't be opened." Tasha stared at that message for a long, long time. It didn't say who it was from, didn't give a name. Just a warning. And warnings like that, they come from two places, cowards or criminals. She wasn't scared, not anymore, but she was cautious because she had a child to protect. And now she wasn't just dealing with office drama. She was standing in the middle of something ugly, intentional, covered up. So the next morning she went quiet. She didn't reply to the text, didn't post anything online, didn't return the HR department's call just yet. She went to the county office, requested public business records tied to the real estate firm. It took 2 hours and $28. But what she found? It nearly knocked the breath from her chest. There were duplicate business accounts, one in the name of the agency, and another in Melanie Hurst's maiden name. Over the past 2 years, that second account had received tens of thousands of dollars in consulting fees, all from properties that had been handled by assistants like Tasha. Tasha checked the dates. Her $1.4 million sale, it lined up with a $19,200 deposit into that second account. She printed the records, 3 pages thick, but it wasn't just about her anymore, because on the last page, another assistant's name showed up, Janelle, and beside her initials, a check entry cancelled, reassigned to management reserve. Tasha felt sick. These women weren't just bullied, they were being stolen from. Mothers, women of color, workers with no cushion. And the deeper she looked, the clearer it became. There wasn't just a pattern, there was a system built on intimidation, on erasure, on silence. Tasha walked straight from that building to a small legal aid office near the freeway. She'd passed it 100 times, never thought she'd need it. But when she walked in and sat across from the young attorney with big glasses and tired eyes, she pulled out every document, the contracts, the emails, the public records. The lawyer said, "This isn't just wrongful termination, this is corporate fraud, and maybe even criminal theft." She paused, looked at Tasha with a kind of disbelief. "You realize you could bring the whole company down with this?" Tasha looked down at the keychain in her pocket, the smooth, worn key. She closed her hand around it and said, "Good. Maybe then they'll stop locking doors on people like me." But just as they began preparing the case, the lawyer's assistant walked in, holding a yellow envelope. It had no return address. Inside was a printed photo of Tasha and her daughter leaving the therapy center. On the back, in marker, "Keep digging, and we start digging too." She stared at that photograph for a long time. The edges were still warm, fresh ink. Someone had printed it recently, delivered it by hand. Tasha's hands were steady, but her stomach, it twisted, not because she was scared for herself. She'd been walking through fire since Maya was born. But that picture wasn't about her. It was a threat to the only thing that mattered more than justice, her child. That night she double-locked the door, closed every blind, tucked Maya in gently, then sat beside her just listening to the sound of her breathing, to the little clicks her mouth made in her sleep. She whispered, "They're not going to touch you, not ever." Because Tasha had survived eviction threats, insurance rejections, even a 2-week stretch with no hot water and only crackers for dinner. But no one, not Melanie, not some crooked company, was going to use her daughter to scare her silent. She took the photo to the police. The officer looked at it, shrugged. "You know who might have sent it?" She said maybe. She had her suspicions. "Any direct threats?" She paused, said, "It's indirect. But it's real." He sighed. "Unfortunately, without an explicit threat, there's not much we can—" Tasha stood up, cut him off. "So if they wait until she's hurt, then you'll help?" He looked down, didn't answer. She walked out. Sometimes silence is the loudest betrayal. Back home, she pulled out an old notebook, the one Maya used to draw in before therapy. Most of the pages were scribbles, stick figures, but one page made her stop. It showed a tall woman with long arms, a red mouth, and a giant key, standing in front of a door with fire on the other side. Behind her, a little girl, safe. Tasha remembered that day. It was after a meltdown at school, when the principal suggested a special needs transfer without even asking her permission. Tasha had fought that day too, alone, and won. Now she was fighting again, and losing wasn't an option. She scanned the drawing, sent it to the lawyer, titled the email, "My Reason." Then something unexpected happened. That same night, an email arrived. Subject line, "Whistleblower Protection." It was from someone inside the firm, anonymized. The body of the message read, "I know what they've done. I've seen the numbers. Check the February payroll file, but be careful. Melanie's not acting alone." Attached was a login credential, time-sensitive, one-time use. Tasha stared at the screen. The risk was clear, but so was the opportunity. She waited until Maya was asleep, plugged in her laptop, and typed in the access code. The screen flashed, and what she saw next was something she was never meant to see. At first, the file looked like any other. Payroll records, names, dates, amounts, but something didn't add up. There were names she didn't recognize, people listed as contract agents, property leads, sales advisors, dozens of them. But Tasha had worked there for 3 years. She knew every name in that building, every assistant, every broker, every cleaning crew member, and these names didn't exist. She clicked deeper. One employee had been paid over $8,000 in a single month. Another had 3 different payment entries, same address, different names. Then she saw it, a payment of $6,450 to a name she knew wasn't real, Shauna Merriweather. But Tasha had seen that name before, on a post-it in Melanie's office. It was a decoy name, a placeholder, a ghost. She searched the name online. Nothing, no license, no ID, no social, just a phantom on paper. And it wasn't just one. There were at least 11 of them, 11 fake employees, being paid from the same account that should have gone to real commissions, including hers. Her stolen sale wasn't an isolated theft. It was part of a laundering pattern. Melanie had built an entire second payroll system on top of the legitimate one the partners upstairs probably never bothered to check, and whoever had emailed her, they knew. They were trying to help, but also trying to protect themselves. She forwarded the file to the attorney. Subject line, "Melanie's Empire." She didn't sleep that night, just stared at the door, keychain in her hand, until a knock broke the silence. It was 7:03 a.m., too early for neighbors, too early for deliveries. Tasha looked through the peephole. No one. She opened the door slowly, and on the welcome mat sat a small white envelope. Inside, a single line typed in bold, "We warned you," and underneath it, a copy of Maya's individualized education plan, her daughter's private school document. That shouldn't be in anyone's hands. There are things a mother can take: late nights, empty fridges, judgment from strangers. But when someone gets hold of your child's IEP, the plan that holds your baby's medical needs, learning differences, speech notes, every struggle they've ever had on paper, that's not just a violation, that's war. Tasha sat on the floor for a long time. The document wasn't folded. It was pristine, printed in color, stapled. That meant someone accessed it, someone printed it. Someone wanted her to know how exposed she was. And the IEP file, it didn't come from school. It came from her company email. She had scanned and sent it months ago when Melanie demanded proof of her daughter's therapy schedule. Now that same file had been weaponized, used as a warning. Tasha called the school immediately. The counselor gasped when she heard, "Ms. Thomas, I don't know how that could have gotten out." Tasha didn't blame her. This wasn't a school breach. It was personal and strategic, because Melanie had one tactic above all: humiliation. Strip you of dignity, make you feel small, so when you finally speak, nobody listens. But Tasha, she had learned to stand in shame and still tell the truth. She picked up the envelope, photographed every angle, bagged it, dropped it off at the legal office like it was evidence in a criminal trial. The lawyer looked at it with wide eyes. This changes everything, because now it wasn't just corporate theft. It was a privacy violation of a child with special needs, and in the state they lived in, that was a felony. The lawyer picked up the phone, dialed someone higher up. Tasha waited, staring at the photo of Maya on her home screen, in her headphones, smiling, hands up like she was dancing with the clouds. The call ended. The lawyer turned to her and said, "They want you to come in Monday morning, not for mediation, for a formal deposition, and they're opening an external investigation." Tasha's heart raced, her voice steady. "Will Melanie be there?" The lawyer nodded. "She's being subpoenaed." That night, Tasha cleaned the house, not out of fear, but out of readiness. Maya helped. She danced with the broom, humming her favorite tune. Her world hadn't changed, but her mother's had. The next morning, Tasha opened her inbox to an unexpected message. From Carmen, the old co-worker who vanished without a word. It said, "I saw the news. I didn't think anyone would ever stand up to her, but you did. If you're still fighting, I want to help. I saved something you need to see." Attached was a zip folder. It was titled Client Recordings 2022. And in one of the files, a familiar voice was saying, "They'll believe me before they believe her. She's just another single mom. Watch." The voice was unmistakable, confident, casual, sharp like a knife wrapped in silk. Melanie Hurst, recorded on speakerphone. Laughing, you could hear a client chuckle in the background, then Melanie again. "Tasha's good at sob stories, I give her that. But emotional damage doesn't close sales. I need people who show up." Another pause. "Honestly, I'm doing her a favor. This place chews up weak women." Tasha hit pause. The room spun. Not because she was surprised, but because this wasn't just meanness. This was admission of prejudice, of targeting, of calculated discrimination, and it was recorded, saved, dated. The lawyer confirmed the file's legitimacy, sent it straight to the investigators, and that afternoon, for the first time, the firm issued a statement, not public, not yet, but internal, circulated among department heads. It said, "Effective immediately, Melanie Hurst is on administrative leave pending a formal external audit of management practices." They didn't name Tasha, didn't thank her, didn't apologize, but they knew. And the silence from that building, it was loud enough to hear across the city. Later that day, her old desk mate, a quiet guy who used to bring her coffee on Mondays, sent her a message. "We're all watching. Keep going." But even with momentum building, Tasha didn't feel victory. Not yet, because Maya still didn't have insurance coverage. The therapy center had called, payments were past due, and her pantry, down to canned beans and oatmeal. Fighting for justice doesn't pay rent. So that night, she made a decision. She posted her story online. Not all the documents, not the recordings, just the truth. A single mother, terminated for choosing her disabled daughter's therapy over a deadline, retaliated against for speaking up, now facing threats. She ended it with, "They took my job, but they didn't take my voice, and I'm not done." The post caught fire, shares, messages, mothers, nurses, teachers, women who'd been silenced and shoved aside. Even a few former clients wrote, "Tasha was the reason we bought our home. I'll never forget her patience with our autistic son. She's the real deal." And then something shifted. A reporter reached out from a local news outlet. She'd seen the post and wanted to talk, not just about the firing, but about the system, about the pattern, and about a woman who refused to be quiet. Tasha agreed. The interview was scheduled, but the night before it aired, someone broke into her car. Nothing stolen, except for one folder, the one that held Maya's old drawings, the ones Tasha carried for strength, and on the passenger seat, a torn piece of paper, 4 words, handwritten in red, "Stay quiet, stay down." She held that red note in her hand for a full minute. It wasn't the handwriting that got her. It wasn't even the break-in. It was the choice of words. Stay quiet. Stay down. like she was a dog, like she was supposed to be afraid of her own breath. But they didn't know her. Tasha had stayed quiet through public tantrums and stares at the grocery store. She'd swallowed pride when landlords called her late again, even when she'd paid early, just in nickels. She'd worked double shifts with a fever, picking Maya up from therapy with trembling hands, and still smiling for her child. So no, red ink doesn't scare her. What scared her was the world Maya might inherit if she gave up now. She filed a police report, this time with backup, her lawyer, the EEOC complaint file, and a witness, the neighbor who'd seen someone in a company-branded hoodie lurking by her car that night. And that morning, the interview aired. Tasha's face, her voice, calm, measured, clear. She told the story not with rage, but with truth. I loved my job, I was good at it, but I'm also a mother, and I was punished for choosing my daughter's health. The response, immediate. The video was shared across real estate groups, advocacy forums, even disability support circles. Women messaged her from Dallas, Atlanta, Kingston, Johannesburg. One wrote, "I cried listening to you. I thought I was the only one who'd been told, maybe you're not cut out for this, after asking for time off to take my son to speech therapy." And then came the email that changed it all, from the Department of Justice. Subject line, formal notice of interest, whistleblower referral. They were opening an independent investigation into the company, the payroll, and Melanie Hurst. Tasha forwarded it to the lawyer. She cried for a full minute before she hit send, but not tears of fear, not even of justice, relief, because someone bigger was watching now. And the more they dug, the more they'd find. But the war wasn't over. That same night, Maya had a meltdown, a bad one. Lights off, screaming. Hands over ears, hyperventilating. Tasha cradled her on the floor, rocking gently, humming that song Maya loved. You are safe, you are whole, you are brave. It lasted almost an hour. Afterward, Maya whispered, "Are the bad people gone, Mommy?" Tasha kissed her forehead. "Not yet, baby, but they're shaking." And as she stood in the quiet living room, the city lights peeking through the blinds, her phone lit up again. A message from a blocked number. This time, just coordinates. A location near the office park. And below it, "You want the truth? Come alone." She knew she shouldn't go. Everything in her body said don't. But something deeper, something fierce and female and fed up, said yes. Because silence had protected too many secrets for too long. And maybe, just maybe, the truth was waiting to be claimed. She parked 2 blocks away, told the lawyer where she was going, set her phone to record, just in case. The address led to an old gym complex. Abandoned mostly, still had mail piled at the door, but the side gate was open. Inside, echoes, dust, the smell of rubber and metal, and in the back hallway behind the lockers, a folded piece of paper taped to a locker door. It said, "For Tasha, don't trust the partners either." The key was already in the lock. She turned it. Inside, a manila folder, labeled PH, Compliance Discrepancies, 2019-2023. She opened it. Pages and pages of names, payouts, unclaimed commissions, suppressed HR reports, even internal memos. One from Melanie, addressed to senior partners, dismissed quietly, payout small, no headlines, no fuss. Women like this don't fight long. The partners knew. Not all, but enough. Enough to have stopped it. Enough to have protected someone like Tasha. And they didn't, because profit has a loud voice, and silence pays well. She photographed every page, then carefully placed the folder back. She wasn't going to keep it. She didn't need to. She had truth now, and truth multiplies when shared. That night, she wrote one last email, subject line, "I'm not afraid of locked doors anymore." She attached the photos, CC'd the attorney, the EEOC, the reporter, and for the first time, the company's board of investors. She hit send, then sat in the dark, holding Maya's old crayon drawing in her lap. She whispered, "They'll never bury us again." But the next morning, as she opened her door to get the paper, a black SUV idled at the curb. Tinted windows, engine running, and in her mailbox, a letter, not typed, handwritten. "We told you to stop. Now we stop you." The wind outside picked up that morning, dust swirling, clouds low and grey. But the real storm? It was inside her chest. Tasha stood there holding that note from the mailbox, not shaking, not weeping, just still. The SUV was still there, no movement, no plate she could see. But she didn't need to see it. She knew what it meant. "Now we stop you." It wasn't about scaring her anymore. It was about shutting her up. But they were late, because the email she'd sent the night before, it was already moving. The board had opened an emergency meeting. The reporter had requested a follow-up, and the Department of Labor had added her case to a multi-agency investigation. Tasha knew the danger, but she also knew this. If they were willing to go this far to hide the truth, then what she carried must be even heavier than she thought. She called the lawyer. He didn't answer. She tried again. Voicemail. She took Maya to therapy anyway, didn't tell her anything, smiled, braided her hair, packed extra crackers, but the whole time she sat in the waiting room her fingers wouldn't stop twitching. Until her phone rang. It was the lawyer, breathing hard. "Tasha, someone broke into the office. They took files, yours too, but we had backups." She stood up so fast the chair nearly toppled. "Are you safe?" she asked. He said yes, then added, "And so are you. I've already moved the case to federal counsel. They're bringing heat now." But still, that night, she couldn't sleep. Not with Maya tossing beside her. Not with that SUV still parked 3 houses down. And just when the silence felt like it would swallow her whole, there was a knock, not on the door, on the window. Tasha jumped, grabbed her phone, already dialing 911. She crept toward the living room, phone shaking in her hand. And there, outside the glass, was a face, familiar. It was Carmen, from work, wet from the rain, eyes wide. Tasha opened the door without thinking. "They're coming for me too," Carmen said, gasping. "But I have something. I didn't know who else to trust." She held out a USB drive, wrapped in plastic, labeled with a single word, "Shares." Tasha made tea, sat Carmen on the couch, wrapped her in a towel. It was late, cold, still raining. Carmen clutched the USB like it was gold. "They promised me silence money," she said. "Told me to sign an NDA, disappear and never talk." Tasha listened. "But I couldn't. Not after I saw your story. You didn't just survive, Tasha. You made them look at you." Then Carmen handed over the drive. And when Tasha plugged it in, her knees nearly buckled, because inside were files Melanie never meant to surface. Ownership documents, stock transfers, profit-sharing reports. Melanie had been doing more than stealing commissions. She had been falsifying internal shareholder reports, hiding profits from junior partners, rewriting names on small sales to inflate her own equity stake. And the biggest shock, one document from 3 years ago was signed in Tasha's name, forged. It transferred her promised junior bonus into Melanie's shell company. Tasha never even knew it existed, that bonus. It would have qualified her for the company's ownership program. She had been one sale away from becoming more than an assistant. Melanie knew, and she stopped it before it could happen. Tasha sat back, heart thudding. This wasn't just discrimination, it wasn't just retaliation, it was corporate identity theft, and now she had proof. Thanks to Carmen, thanks to her own refusal to give up, she sent everything, to the lawyer, to the DOJ, to the reporter, to the partners who had been sleeping on truth while cashing checks from lies. And by sunrise, the story broke. Headline across 3 states. Real estate exec accused of theft, fraud, and disability discrimination in landmark whistleblower case. Melanie's name was everywhere, and Tasha's right beside it. Not as a victim, but as the woman who exposed it all. But as the cameras rolled and messages poured in, Tasha turned off her phone. Because that morning, Maya had a school performance. One she'd practiced for weeks. Tasha sat in the front row, eyes puffy, heart full. And when Maya walked on stage, holding a paper flower, she looked right at her mother and said, "This one's for you," Because you never gave up, Tasha cried, not out of pain this time, but from the weight of something she hadn't felt in a long, long time, freedom. But just as the children bowed, her phone buzzed again. A new email, subject line, settlement offer, urgent. She didn't open the email right away, not during the standing ovation, not during the drive home, not while Maya danced in the living room, still wearing her paper flower crown. No, Tasha waited, because after everything she'd been through, the humiliation, the threats, the silence, the truth finally spoken, she'd learned something sacred. Dignity is never urgent. She opened the message that night. Ms. Thomas, in light of recent developments, and to avoid protracted litigation, we are prepared to offer a full settlement. It listed the amount, a six-figure number. Enough to erase the debt, replace the tires, buy insurance for Maya, and with it, a non-disclosure agreement, a silence clause, a muzzle, the kind they hoped she'd wear proudly. But Tasha had tasted silence before, and she knew. It never fed her child. She sent a single-line reply, "You don't have enough money to buy back my voice." Then she stood, took the keychain the janitor had given her, held it up to the light. She still didn't know what it opened. Maybe nothing. Or maybe it wasn't about a door at all. Maybe it was about the truth. That sometimes, when the world tells a woman she doesn't belong, when it shuts her out, shoves her down, and dares her to disappear, she doesn't need permission. She needs a key. And sometimes, that key isn't a tool. It's a choice to speak, to stay, to stand. Tasha never returned to the firm, but word got out. A non-profit housing group reached out, asked if she'd speak to single mothers training to become agents. She did. Then they offered her a job, not as an assistant, not as a backup, but as Director of Equity and Access. She laughed when they told her the title, then cried when they said the salary, and when she walked into her new office, it smelled nothing like peppermint coffee and everything like justice. There was a small plaque on the door. She hadn't asked for it, but someone had put it there anyway. It read, Tasha Thomas, Advocate, Mother, Closer. And when Maya came by after school, she ran into the room, arms open wide, and whispered, "You have your own door now, Mommy." Tasha knelt down, smiled. "No, baby, I built this one." She thought she had been working for a man who held all the keys, but in the end, she carried the courage to open the right door, and that's something no one can ever take from her again. Mr. Solomon, pausando, if this story reminded you of your own, let it live in the comments. Because sometimes, my dear, the door ain't locked. We just need the right key and the courage to turn it.